The pilots of Air Transport International Flight 782 prepare to depart from Kansas City with just 3 of their 4 working engines.
A 3-engine ferry. It's a difficult maneuver.
100 knots. Okay.
Their takeoff goes tragically wrong.
We're off the runway.
Go max power.
You got it!
This accident, of course, was very tragic, and they did not make it.
Examination of the wreckage reveals very little.
Stem to stern, wingtip to wingtip was airworthy.
But when investigators visit the simulator used to train the pilots,
this is not how their aircraft would have behaved.
They begin to understand the origins of this accident.
The simulators are extremely accurate. We were shocked that this one was not.
Okay, first things first. Let's review our 3-engine ferry procedure.
Sure thing.
Yep.
Air Transport International Flight 782 has been cancelled. One of its 4 engines won't start.
Maintain directional control using rudder and nose wheel steering.
The replacement crew is taking the cargo plane for repairs to a maintenance facility in Massachusetts.
The only crews that are permitted to do a 3-engine ferry are the very experienced crews, because it is very dangerous. It does not happen very often.
Captain Walter Meager has worked his way up from flying the DC-6 and DC-7 and is now captain on the airline's DC-8 aircraft.
The captain had about 4,000 hours in the DC-8. He'd been flying the DC-8 for years.
Max wind for takeoff, crosswinds 10 knots, tailwinds 5 knots.
Okay, let's check the weather on that.
First Officer Mark Ulmer is new to the company and the plane, but he's been flying for 14 years.
He only had about 200 hours in the DC-8. However, he was commended for being enthusiastic, for trying to learn, and being an important part of the crew.
There's a third crew member on board, flight engineer Kerry Hardy.
Flight engineer had more than 4,000 hours of flight time and in large airplanes. He was a very experienced pilot.
It's a 2-hour flight from Kansas City to Chicopee, Massachusetts, where the engine is to be repaired.
Here you go.
Thank you.
The crew has concerns about their schedule.
There is a curfew on the airport in Massachusetts. The airline had told the crew that they needed to land by 11 p.m. because that is when that airport would close.
What we're going to need to do is get as much direct as we can. That'll allow us to fly a little bit better than the 280 knots indicated.
Well, as pilots, we're always trying to hurry. The crew had decided that they wanted to fly a more direct route at a faster speed.
So we'll be using 19 right?
First Officer Ulmer wants the longest runway for their takeoff.
I'm going to request right because we'll get an extra 1,300 feet.
Okay.
In order to take off, the DC-8 needs power from at least 3 of its 4 engines.
You always want the longest runway that you can get with a takeoff like this, so that you have more room to get the airplane up to the proper speeds.
Kansas City, this is Air Transport 782, ready to taxi. We're going to be a 3-engine departure.
Flight 782 checks with air traffic control about their runway assignment.
Air Transport 782, south on Bravo, taxi runway 1 left.
Okay, south on Bravo, taxi 1 left, Air Transport 782. What's the winds?
Winds 240 at 4.
Roger.
That's a tailwind, right?
Yep.
You don't want a tailwind with a 3-engine takeoff because it's going to take more runway.
240 and we're running into what?
4.
4 knots.
The tailwind was acceptable. The maximum tailwind allowed was 5 knots, and they had 4 knots.
Flight 782 taxis to the longer runway.
Takeoff data.
Okay, this is a max power takeoff.
The pilots review the required speeds for the 3-engine takeoff.
Okay, I got VMCG of 107, 123 for VR, 140 for V2, and 210 for the cleanup.
Set.
This takeoff requires raising both inboard engines, Engine 2 and Engine 3, to max power. Only when the plane reaches a certain speed can the third working engine, Engine 4, be increased to max power.
Controlling the airplane on the runway while you are adding the power from the third engine is vital. It must be done slowly, and you must be able to keep control of the airplane at all times.
And of course, we'll all be watching real close for loss of directional control.
2 engines on the right side are going to cause the aircraft to veer to the left. It's only going to have 1 engine operating on the left side. So directional control is the critical issue on a 3-engine takeoff like this.
Number 1 engine is inoperative, so what we're going to do is set max power on number 2 and number 3.
Right.
Right.
As the crew nears the end of the taxi, they finalize the takeoff plan.
Okay? Then I'll ease in number 4.
And I'll call increments of 0.1.
Yeah.
Flight 782 is now ready for takeoff.
Okay, coming up on 2 and 3.
The crew lets the inboard engines spool up before the plane starts moving.
Set max power.
Max power 2 and 3.
At 8:20 p.m., Air Transport International Flight 782 begins its takeoff.
.3, 0.4.
The flight engineer closely monitors engine power.
Airspeed's alive.
1.6.
80 knots. 90 knots.
But 20 seconds into the takeoff roll, the plane veers left of the center line.
1.8.
100 knots.
The captain uses his rudder to redirect the plane to the center of the runway, but it doesn't work.
Abort. Spoilers.
Air Transport 782 aborting takeoff.
Flight 782 aborts its 3-engine takeoff.
Air Transport 782, roger. When able, turn right off the runway. Do you need any assistance?
Negative assistance?
No, negative.
Negative assistance, Air Transport 782.
The crew considers what went wrong.
We were at 1.6, and then power went all the way up to 190 as you ran it up. So it went up real fast.
And number 4 jerked up while I was trying to ease it in.
You brought it up too fast, or it jerked up, or what?
The power on it just came on too fast. That's what happened.
Hardy proposes a solution.
If you want to try it again, I could try adding the power if you like.
Okay, let's do it that way.
It was decided that the flight engineer would help the captain, and he would add the power on the third engine for the second takeoff.
Tell them we want to taxi back and have another try at it.
Kansas City Ground Air Transport 782 would like to taxi back.